All right. Welcome, everybody, to episode number 52.1 of Collectible Live. It is Tuesday, November the 8th, 2022. My name is Jeremy Lee, and I would like to thank everyone who tuned in last Sunday with our guest, Mark Mader, a collector of tickets and cards, a veteran, a Gulf War veteran, a collector of Desert Shield cards. It was a great episode. Check that out. You can catch that on the Collectible app YouTube channel, as well as the Sports Cards Live YouTube channel. But let's get on with tonight's episode and bring him out. He is the Chief Visionary Officer at Beckett, Scott Roskind. Welcome to the show. How are you doing tonight, 2 hours later from our first attempt at this show?
I'm doing great. Gave me a chance to have dinner, which was nice. I got to see my younger daughter, which I never get a chance to do lately. So it was good. And we might be the only 0.2. I mean, is this the only 0.2 that you've ever had?
Yeah, so this is episode 52. I think we did 52.0 2 hours ago. We tried. I had technical difficulty with the internet. I think that is fixed. I hope it is fixed. So we are now back for episode 52.1 of Collectible Live. And welcome to the show, everybody. I'm feeling better about this one. Be sure to put your comments, your questions in the chat. We're going to have a great conversation here with Scott. Scott, let's jump right in. Thank you, Mid-Atlantic. Says, looking forward to the reboot. Glad to have, looks like a lot of people are already back. So welcome back, everybody. And apologize for whatever was happening earlier. But Scott, we're going to start fresh as if we didn't go through anything yet. Because this episode will be on podcast as well, and will live forever. The episode, the version 52.0 has been deleted. So Scott, let's start off with how you came to be at Beckett via the sale of your company Knox, and I'll let you start right from how and why you created Knox up until where we are today.
Yeah. So it's an interesting story. So as I was mentioning to you backstage and over the last few days when we got a chance to catch up, I've been an entrepreneur, so I've been in sports. I work for the Knicks. I help run the NBA Retired Players Association. I've done a bunch of different businesses over the last 20 so years. And in 2015, we had a business idea to build a collection management system for luxury watches and art. I was really looking at that space and the collectible space around it, and trying to understand how do people get values on things they're buying? How do they understand the secondary market? So I shelved that idea because we were working on another business that had already launched. And then in 2020, when I had a little time and I was sitting around, and as you can see from around me and behind me, going through a lot of the things that I collected for the last 40 some odd years, I started thinking about this model and how I could interject it into the sports card space. So started to build out a concept of a collection management system, but it wasn't anything like anybody else was building, where they were telling you, oh, sell a card here because it's going up this much or it's going down this much, so maybe you should buy the card. It wasn't about buying and selling. It was really about collecting. So whenever I spoke about Knox and sort of pitched the idea or pitched some of my co-founders to get involved, it was always collector first. This was the approach. This is what I wanted to do, which is to really understand your collection. So understanding what you have from a drill down perspective, to build community into it, to build something that was completely educational for the user. So it's a pretty deep platform, and that's how it came. It was really because I'm a collector and I wanted to see my collection in a different way. First, I wanted to visualize it in a beautiful way online. I want to be able to share that. That was like easy. But then I really wanted to understand, what percentage of my collection was basketball. Of that, who are my top, athletes that are in my basketball collection, so on and so forth. And so that's really where it came from.
So, you mentioned you wanted to be able to visualize it nicely. Let me ask this, because it just popped in my mind. Like, a lot of people share images of their cards on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook. How did you kind of contemplate those platforms when you were developing the idea for Knox in your head?
I kind of separated it out. I think the only one that really, and so we worked on something, and there'll be something you'll see in the future, because Knox is now Beckett Collect, and there'll be some things. So I won't give everything away, but The place that I really concentrate on, because like many of us, I have, a Instagram account that is totally dedicated to the hobby. There's nothing else on it. I don't follow anything else. So that's where I do to get my fix, 8 to 12 times a day when I scroll through and see what's happening, like a lot of us. So I think that Instagram would be the one place to see it, but you're only seeing it piecemeal. You're not seeing it all together. And then you have things like, for me, I keep cards all around me. I have some in the house. I use some vault services. And so it's fairly spread out. So it sounds crazy. I don't always know what I have anymore. And I want to be able to see everything in one place. So for me, it was more really about that, because I think there's some beauty in being able to sort of flip card by card through your collection, at least the ones that really have meaning to you.
Yeah, I mean, even before people started sharing on the social media platforms, a lot of us were using platforms like Photo Bucket or Flickr to store our images of our cards. I find it, I use Dropbox actually, Scott, and it works out well for me, because when I'm at a card show or I'm at an LCS and I see a card, I don't know if I have it or if I need it for a set. I can look and see maybe it's an upgrade or something like that. It's nice to have those images readily available. I want to also mention, you're now Chief Visionary Officer at Beckett, and that, as we discussed earlier, it was part and parcel with Beckett acquiring Knox from you and your partners. We mentioned that, and I read a blog post recently where the author was talking about the importance of having collectors at the executive levels of companies that service the hobby. And it's funny because here we are doing this episode 2 hours after we were initially scheduled to do it, and it's darker in your house right now. I can see the light isn't coming through those windows.
I turned off some of the lights. I could turn them back on now.
Oh, it's okay, but we can still see piles of white card boxes in your basement or your room, wherever you are there. And that to me tells me that, look, this guy is definitely a collector. He's a C-suite executive with Beckett Collectibles, but you are also a collector. And as somebody who has a lot of nostalgia for the Beckett brand, seeing that, it gives me the warm fuzzies. It makes me feel good about what's going on at Beckett, about you being there. And you and I, obviously, we have a really good rapport. It's great to see that you are a true collector and you are steering the vision of Beckett. Do you find for yourself that being a collector helps you do that?
I think there's no question. I think there's no question. I think today it's interesting, right? Like when I started in business, you would go to a job, they would tell you what to do, and you would do it, and outside feedback wasn't necessarily wanted. Today, I think that being a collector and being able to reach out to other collectors and really take in their input and information and understanding, at least from my perspective, what I think a collector wants, especially for the card side, because Beckett has, we have VHS, we have a comic book division, so we have, we're starting into tickets. And so we have other divisions too, but the card side, especially, I think very vocal, obviously, as we all know, the hobby is very vocal. They tell you what they love and what they don't. Which is fine. And I do think it's really important, because at the end of the day, at Beckett, we want to build something that really resonates with every collector. And it's been around for 30 plus years. It's a heritage brand. Dr. Beckett is, revered. So I think there's something really special about it. But I do think it's important to have somebody, because you have to really understand, and things move quickly now, right? Like, you've seen us do some things. We could talk about what we did on the pricing side over the last couple of months. But things move pretty quickly. So I think if you don't have your ear down to the ground and paying attention, you're going to miss something. And I think, in some ways, we've seen that in the past with all companies who just aren't, paying enough attention.
Yeah. So you developed Knox from like 2015 forward, and now, Beckett acquired it from you, and you're now working with Beckett. Was you working with Beckett a part of the deal to sell Knox to Beckett?
Yeah, and I'll repeat some of the stuff that we were talking about, but yeah. So yes, I had to stay on. It was definitely part of the deal. And by the way, because of my love for the hobby and really enjoying what I was doing every day, with the small team that we had built in Knox and moving that forward, I wanted to stay doing this. And to me, I'm not really working. We're working really hard at Beckett. I mean, we are putting in a ton of hours, but it's just fun. We're having a good time, and I'm really enjoying it. So yeah, I think that for me, I wanted to stay on. It was part of the project. We were discussing before. I've done a handful of startups, and I love that phase. Beckett was really, really interesting to me. You had this heritage brand, an iconic brand, as actually Ezra and I talked about probably a year ago. Um, and you have Knox, which is a startup. We can bring that into Beckett and elevate Beckett from within and almost act like a startup inside this heritage brand. Now, that to me is something, super interesting. Really, there are very few opportunities like that. So I think that really attracted me, and I'm excited to really sort of elevate what we've been doing and change some things, frankly.
That's a pretty unique opportunity, sort of a once in a lifetime type of opportunity to, again, like you said, to take a startup and incubate it in a heritage brand with built-in customer base loyalty, so much nostalgia. So you developed Knox as a collector's tool to showcase collection, communicate, among other things. But you're now the chief visionary officer for all of Beckett. So how did you transition from being like laser focused on Knox, which is now going to be rebranded as Beckett Collect? How did you transition from that to having many more verticals within the Beckett umbrella to focus on? And how involved are you on the side of on the grading side? And while you just think about your answer, I just want to say hello to a few people for very quickly here. We got Mid Atlantic. Yeah, we did that. Thank you, Mid Atlantic. Facebook user says hello to you. We have C Dubs. What's going on? Rob Veris. If that's the real Rob Veris, that's Rob from Burbank Sports. Good to see you, Rob. And we got John, the basketball card guy now. That's definitely him. Good to see you, John. So please, if you remember the question I asked a second ago, why don't you address that?
Well, John threw me off because I love Rob, first of all, and I love John, the basketball card guy, who, by the way, is a tremendous, tremendous collector and has really been helpful with Knox. He was a great advisor for us and is helping us with some things we do now at Beckett too. So he's been awesome.
I met John at the Mint Collective in March when Beckett had a sort of a private event to talk about Knox and Due Dilly and a few other things. And him and I have had a great relationship since then.
So you want me to go back to the question? I remembered it.
If you got it, yeah, you bet.
So basically, for me, bringing Knox in is one thing. We have tremendous product people, tremendous engineer who's really in charge of where that goes in the vision. We have a great head of product. I am actually really concentrating, and this will stem across all of the sort of the different units of the business or business lines, but I'm concentrating on our marketing side, everything go to market. So marketing, sales, customer service, and I know we'll hear some things on that. All things need to improve, and our business development. Those are really the efforts that I'm going to be involved in. As well as the product side. Obviously, I have to stay in tune with what's happening and how we're developing Beckett Collect because it, is really my vision. But we have some great people for that, and I think I can be helpful in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, I'm sure you can be, just talking to you. Let's touch on then, bringing this, you're a fresh person in the leadership in a leadership chair at Beckett, and the Beckett brand being one that we've mentioned. It's iconic, it's nostalgic, it's a heritage brand. It kind of is synonymous with the hobby. However, the brand itself has I think some people say has become stagnant over the last couple of years. Have you noticed that? And what do you want to do, or what do you kind of have in mind to kind of revive things?
I guess, being a collector, looking at it from the outside, I think that I think the brand was doing fine. I think the pandemic obviously really, even though it was in a lot of ways a great thing for the hobby, I mean, which is a horrible thing to say, but it really pushed everybody back into it, which is great because now many of those folks have stayed. Sure, some have come and gone, but ultimately, I think we're north of where we were in 2018, 19, which is great. I think the brand in general was I'll say quiet, for the most part. They laid low. They tried to do the job. They've got tremendous graders there. I can tell you, just on a side note, that I'm super impressed with the graders. I've had a chance during the National, when we were grading on site there, to go and watch them and just, see what's going on. And then spending some time in the office. I'm there every couple of weeks in Dallas. I live in New York, but I go every couple of weeks and I talk to them, and I walk around and just try to learn, frankly, just to see what they're doing and the process that it takes. And these folks really care about what they're doing. It is kind of remarkable. So I give them a ton of credit, and many have been there for a long time. But I think in any business, if you have folks that have been there for a long time, which is a massive benefit, there can also be, not in a bad way, but sometimes there's some complacency or some things maybe that, times change. Maybe you don't have the right folks, or looking at it in a different way may help. We've been successful this way, so we'll keep doing it that way. I always have this sort of the approach of, what can we try to do different, and what can we do from a marketing standpoint that might be different, and I think there are we're a little bit lucky because we're coming into this in a way where we can bring in some folks on the marketing side to try to do different things that the team before didn't have that opportunity. They just weren't there, but we're now putting more resources, which is really good, into some of these other avenues. And I think you'll see a lot of progress across the board.
That's good. I think that'll make a lot of people happy to hear. And, I think what you were talking about before is that when you have people who've been in their position or in a company for a long time, you have that attitude of, well, we've always done it this way. And mm-hmm. I think that it ties into the cliche that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I've always said, if it ain't broke, how can we make it better? And I think that's what an entrepreneur, an innovator does. They don't remain complacent. They look for ways to do it better. I have a feeling that you're the kind of executive, the kind of entrepreneur who's going to bring that way of thinking into Beckett. And I guess I'll lead that into the question for you is, how difficult, and this isn't just specific to Beckett, but you've got experience, and for anyone out there that runs a business, how difficult is it for new management to come in and kind of convert the staff into becoming maybe aligned, or at least buying in somewhat to the new vision? And I'll also just add that it's like, you think about a sports franchise, when a GM is fired and a new GM comes in, they usually clean house and bring in their own coaching staff, their own scouting staff, those sorts of things, because it might be hard to get the legacy staff to buy in. So how has the experience been for you? And how do you think that does the professional sports analogy, does that apply to a company like Beckett?
Well, I think it's an interesting analogy. I think that the difference is, in this situation, there are the institutional knowledge and the relationships that some of the folks have that have been there forever is really important. And I think the other interesting part of it is that they're actually the key folks there who have been there for a long time have, I think, done a really amazing job of connecting with, and there's several new people that have come in, not just me, right? But we have a new CEO, Kunal Chopra, is fantastic, right? We purchased a company called Due Dilly. Andrew Meadows, fantastic. He's the founder and CEO there. He's coming in to work on innovation. And then there are others. We have, a new head of marketing, this guy, Dave Aziz. He's terrific. Head of business development, Jonathan Kramer, is terrific. So we have all these new people. And I think the folks who have been there for a while and are still there, right? I think have done a really nice job of reaching out, being available to us, answering questions, trying to help us, and thinking about things also more critically and differently as well. So I think in this case, it's an interesting one because I, in general, may agree with you. Would be like, okay, Elon Musk came in and, wiped everybody out. And, like, this is what happens a lot of the time, right? And you said it, GM, the same thing. I was around teams too. So I saw it, firsthand. Coaches are gone. My assistant coach, I'm just I'm sitting in the front office with Ernie Grunfeld. I didn't have to go anywhere. So I've seen it. But in this case, I think it's a little bit different. The hobby is a small world too. So it's also very helpful to get their take on what we're doing. Now, we'll throw out some crazy ideas and some of them go, oh, no, this will never work. Sometimes we may just say, let's just try it anyway and see what happens. And I think we'll do a bunch of that. We'll try some things. Some things are definitely not going to work. But if you don't try, you don't really know. And you can't always say, oh, we're going to measure it. Oh, we'll do this and we'll figure it out. Or we'll talk to enough people. I don't know. Like, focus groups are good. But at a certain point, you got to really just throw it out there and see what happens.
I like that approach personally. I think you have to. You can think you have the best idea ever. You try it and it can totally flop, or you think you have an idea that this one's probably not going to work, but we've already come this far. Let's put it out there, and it can be a home run. So yeah, I think that's a good approach. Let's talk about the Beckett grading. Let's talk about the slab for a moment. Any changes coming to the slab, to the label, to the inner sleeve? I think this is a question that people want to know. There's a lot of versions of the slab out there, really, in terms of the label. Plus, there's 5 different colors of label. You've got gold, silver, white, blue for authentic, and black, of course, for pristine. What are your thoughts on that? I've just heard narrative out there that some people would like to see more consistency among the color of the label. Some people like the inner sleeve, some don't. Subgrades or no subgrades. What can you shed any insight into what might be coming on any of those topics?
Sure. Well, the subgrade one is fairly easy. I mean, I think the subgrades, the hobby has kind of spoken to us in a few ways recently on that. So I think the subgrades they're here to stay. The team does a great job with them. I think that they're really, I mean, obviously there are other companies now, including Tag. Yes, I can put it out there. We're all friends here, that are doing things that are much more transparent. But at least the subgrades are the original, transparent grading. They're not, what you're doing at Tag, but they do give you some inkling of why this card got a certain grade. I know with some of the other grading companies, and I love, and I know people at most of them, you just don't know. And we were talking before. I mean, I have cards from, because I'm a collector, I have cards from all grading companies. So when I look at it, and sometimes I wonder why. At least with Beckett, the subgrades do speak to you. So I think that won't go anywhere. That's, if anything, we'll continue to emphasize it. Maybe technology will help us in some certain ways in the future that we can, bring even more openness to that. I think from the label, the label itself, I think now's the time. Anybody in the audience wants to throw some comments in or share some input, now is definitely the time. I think there will be changes coming on both the label side and the case side. I am working on it. It's not an overnight process by any stretch of the imagination. There are a ton of opinions on it, as you can imagine. So it'll take some time. It's not going to be overnight, but there are definitely going to be some things coming along the way. So I think, to your point, are there too many colors of labels? Maybe, yeah. Maybe there are. Maybe some, uniform look is better. We were talking, if you're a collector, maybe you want to see, all your Michael Jordan cards and, with a silver label or a gold label and so on and so forth. So I think some of that stuff, is definitely weighing on our decisions, but there has not been sort of to the label point, a firm decision made. So now is the time definitely for feedback, which we will happily take. Well, sure.
So I let me tell you this quick story. At the National this past July, I made a biggest trade of my life. I made a trade for 3 2009 exquisite patch cards. They were all Slab by Beckett. They were all BGS 7.5. So they have the white label. I wanted the card. I don't really care about the grade. At the Burbank show, you know, a month later, I found a fourth card from that set. I got the Michael Jordan, the LeBron James, and the Kobe Bryant in Atlantic City. At Burbank, I found the Kevin Durant. And it was graded a BGS 8, also a white label. And I have to tell you, Scott, if that was an 8.5 or higher, I don't know that I would have added it because it would not be consistent with my 3 white label 7.5s. So It's funny. I almost preferred a lower grade because it's consistent. I like some uniformity. So let me ask you this. I know you've kind of touched on it, but do you personally want to see more consistency with the label and the slab, because there's so many versions of the Beckett slab out there? And I don't mean the colors of the label, I mean the format overall. Would you like to see, and can we kind of hope that you're going to implement the hobby more consistency in the presentation?
Yeah, I think I'm a lot like you in that I find the same thing at times when I'm looking at things together as pairs or groups, especially when you're, collecting a set or you've got certain players and you want to line them up. Even if you're doing if you've got a rainbow that you're working on, you certainly, that could get also, I think, somewhat frustrating. So I do think that would be my goal would be to get more to that end. The black label 10, that's not going to go away. I mean, I think that's very clear, but I think others, thank you. Black label 10 is king. So I think, that won't go away, but I do think we can, simplify things. And by the way, like some of these things that we could simplify, will probably help from an operational standpoint as well.
Right.
Which, we're not thinking about as collectors, but now I have to think about that a little bit too. So.
Even just using the word simplify makes me think that you're going to get yourselves on the right track, or the right track according to my collecting habits. So, okay, there's a whole bunch of comments. We're going to run through them. We'll stop at the ones that can warrant some response. David French says there has to be better security features coming soon. So I'm sure you're looking at that. Regarding hologram, Hockey Cards Up is not a fan of the inner sleeve. I know. I confirm this for me, but does Beckett look at the inner sleeve as a bit of a differentiator?
Yeah, there's no doubt. There's no doubt that they do. We do, and you'll see. We are working on an inner sleeve that is, I will say, more clear. Because I have a ton of Beckett cards too, so I understand what people are talking about. I think it is protective. Most people are very either on one side or the other. I think we could do a slightly better job with the sleeve, which we're doing. So that will happen at some point soon. But yeah, we definitely use it as a differentiator for sure.
All right, good. Let's say hi to my buddy Drew Herndon. What's up? The DH is in the house. And after talking about the inner sleeve, he makes the comment that it's essential, especially in terms of flawless NT. I think what he's getting at are thicker cards.
Yeah.
That, one of the bigger problems I see is actually in the raw card review when they go into the semi-rigids and they can really pinch the corners. I think that's something to consider. Anything you want to say to that, or? No,
I think that's fair.
Makes sense. Yeah. Hockey Card says, is it possible to give the option to opt out of the inner sleeve? And that's something that, I mean, I think it's a reasonable request, but it would then take away the consistency and uniformity of the presentation of the overall brand. But that might be a worthwhile sacrifice to give that option.
Yeah, I think that's something interesting. And there may be something to that. We've been talking about some things that may lend towards doing that, but that would have to be sort of further down the road, and definitely a self-selected. Our default will be to go to the sleeve. So yes.
Drew says, use the nicer stock on the flip, no matter the grade. Low grades already disappoint enough. Keep the black label. And I'm with him on that. I'm all for black and then one consistent for the rest of it. And listen, I mean, Beckett's been using 3 colors for a long time.
Yeah.
Like, evolve. I think you'll get there. Hockey Cards Up says, why not have an Instagram contest where people can design a label, pick the 5 best, and have people vote online to determine a winner? This way the hobby picks it. What do you think of that idea?
while I like it as a hobbyist myself and a collector, I don't know. It's an interesting one. I'm going to have to get with our head of marketing and talk to him about that. But I think it is an interesting idea for sure. I don't know if the hobby picking it would be the answer, because that's a lot of cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah.
But I think getting folks' ideas would be super, super interesting.
Let me float this out there to you, just as a bit of an adjustment to this particular suggestion. Is, you've got group submitters, you've got people who have their feet on the ground.
Yeah.
They're the one, your biggest customers. They're the ones that are doing the most business, moving the most cards. Maybe that's your a more focused sort of focus group. Contender says, what's the future? Refractor labels. I've seen people talk about that before. I think there's a few vanity slab companies in the space now that are doing sort of that customized label thing. And I wouldn't want to see that with one of the established incumbent human grading companies myself.
Yeah, no, I don't think we would go to that. I think we will do something that has real security features, that, provides security for tampering, for any copying, for fake slabs, labels, things like that, more than anything else, versus sort of color matching. Like we're not going to do that.
Yeah. Drew says that inner sleeve I would use on certain chromium stock is awesome. Vintage probably not needed. He goes on to say, if you have a 7.5, 8, 5, 9, 9, 5, and 10 all side by side, it feels completely different, which I think we recognize that.
Yeah.
Mikey Singer, who will be helping run the expo this weekend, says simplifying is always great, and I'm with him on that one as well. He says, I love the inner sleeve. It makes me feel the card is much safer than most slabs. Drew, what is going on, buddy? I'm on my way to Toronto tomorrow for the expo. Cannot wait. And Mid-Atlantic says, let's see what he says. Nat Turner claims Beckett won't remove cards from its pop report when notified by PSA of the Beckett to PSA crossover. Is it true? And will Beckett commit to removing cards from the pop report? It's good for collectors. Are these topics that you are that you are in the know of and can speak to as the chief visionary officer?
The pop report, yes, we've been starting to look at it, but it'll probably come out of our innovation side, where that goes and where it ends up. I know there's some work to be done there. This is an interesting point on the crossover. It's interesting. It would have to be, we would have to have a real sort of one-to-one working relationship with PSA to make that kind of a thing happen. So I think that's further down the road, but you can imagine if they're getting a crossover, they'd have to then report it to us, send us the information, send us a picture of the label, so on and so forth. So there's a lot more. I think there's a lot more to it than just, ripping it out and somebody self-reporting. It would have to be, we'd have to have a real, relationship to do that, which, by the way, might not be the worst idea. That might be a great idea.
Well, listen, I'm not going to speak for either of you, but this is an area where you guys put the hobbyists ahead of kind of any competitive feelings you have for each other. And I'm not meaning you, Scott, personally. I have a feeling I don't know for sure, but I think that you'd probably be open to that because it's cooperative and it helps the hobby, which is what Mid-Atlantic's last comment was, good for collectors. We know the pop reports are already extremely misleading. You quote, and you see the biggest sellers out there, whether it's PWCC on their platform or Probstein on eBay, they put in the descriptions, they'll put in pop whatever. Absolutely. It's not true. It's just not true anymore. So if the two premier human grading companies, being PSA and Beckett, could talk to each other, I think that would be something that would be important. I think it's a great idea, and I'm sure we'd like to see more accuracy or just ability to rely on population reports than we have right now.
Totally right. I'll throw one more thing at you and the viewers, anybody listening, is that another area of cooperation, which actually I did bring up to somebody at PSA already, is fakes. So it happens to every grade. I don't care. It happens to every grading company. Every grader can get duped at some point. There are some excellent fake cards out there, not just from sports cards, but also when you get into gaming cards. and TCG stuff as well. That's an interesting area where if we see a fake on something and we know it's out there, to be able to report that amongst each other, I think could be really great for the hobby. I mean, because then all of a sudden, like, how do we know that somebody didn't, run 100 fakes of a card? They sent, 30 to us, 30 to PSA, send some to SGC, and send some to CSG or TAG or whoever, right? Maybe somebody finds that, they report it, and then we have a shared database of something like that. That, to me, I think would also be really helpful in a way that we can work together to help the hobby. Like
that, there's so many comments. There's so much. The new catchphrase in the hobby right now is hanky panky. There's so much hanky panky that goes on in our hobby. Wherever there's money, you're gonna have some bad actors, and we definitely have that here. But this is something that the word regulation comes into play. People often say, well, how would you do it, or what? Well, listen, self-regulation is the only really thing that I think that is going to come in the near term. And this is a way to self-regulate. Drew makes the comment here. He says there's no way to truly know all the cards removed that are cracked out, etc. But that's not what we're talking. We're talking about when I send in a PSA slab to Beckett, and then Beckett cracks it out. The customer sends it in. That's what we're talking about. And there is a way to address that. So that's one way to make the hobby better for the hobby, just like you're talking about this cooperative approach to counterfeits and fakes. I mean, the fact that the grading companies don't share the information with the hobby is, I think it's a mistake. I think it's a real short-term kind of thing. Let's grow the pie instead of trying to steal each other's and share.
Yeah. And to your point, and also that will help eliminate some of the fraud and some of these, counterfeit fake cards that happen. I mean, look back, I've been collecting for quite a long time, and you look back, and part of the reason that I kind of, went in and out for many years, is because, there were so many fake cards when we were growing up, so many trim cards, in the 90s and the late 80s and things like that it just gave you a bad feel, overall for the hobby. And for this to be to the point where it is today, we really have to eliminate, that entirely if we can, and get rid of it.
Yeah, I think there's a solution coming moving forward, but looking back, I think we'll always have those issues. Anthony George says, as far as slabs I have held, says I have not yet held rare edition or tag in hand. BGS is the best feeling looking slab to me, and it's not even close. Please don't change too much. So no matter what you say, you're not going to please everybody, but I think evolution is a good thing. And hey, time's going by. So
yes.
All right.
I can tell Anthony that I don't think it'll change. It won't be an unbelievable drastic change. But it will be improved. It will be improved at some point down the road. But I happen to agree, even though I obviously work at Beckett now, but I happen to like their cases also the best, even prior to, selling Knox to Beckett. But I agree with that. So yeah.
And a lot of people do. It's compared to PSA, it's a much more substantial slab. It's heavier, it's bigger, it's thick. It feels, if your card feels safer in it. And I mean, I have several of each. So
I guess especially for the thicker cards, like you were saying on the ones that you have, Jeremy, some of those, exquisite cards.
Yeah.
It probably feels a little better.
Yeah, exactly. Contender says, why don't all grading companies offer a written explanation of why their card graded the way it did? They do it for comics. And the reason for that, I had Nat Turner on the show about 14 or 15 months ago. And I said, will you do that? He basically said no. I'd have to go back and rewatch, but I think it just comes down to time and resources, and that it would cost more money to do that, which, well, of course it would, but then the price has to go up. I don't know. I know that I can speak to it at Tag. Our system automatically generates it, so there's no real labor involved. But what are your thoughts on that from a Beckett perspective?
I think it's interesting. I think we have, as I said, we have a comic brand called CBCS. So it's comic grading company, and they do very well, and they do graders notes. And that's what they call them. So when you pull up, your book, you'll see some notes from the graders. So we're, Beckett as a company, we're doing that in one division. It hasn't been done in cards. It's something that I did throw out recently to the group, and I think it's something we will explore. I want to see how much, once we get a little further down the road with our tech development, how that could help us, get that in a very easy way. And think about, like, this is far off, but like you all see how I think. Voice notes may be even easier. Like, some sort of like, AI system where you can punch it in and just say, here's why, here's this, look for this, this, or this. And, so voice notes might be very, very interesting at some point, especially when you're keeping your card in Beckett Collect and it's all on our system. There's a lot of interesting things we can do that we've been thinking about and working on.
Yeah, I think it's something that I've always thought was, especially when we see a pricing model that the more valuable your card is, the higher the fee is. I don't think Beckett does. I think I know PSA does that. I don't think Beckett does that. I know at Tag we're not doing that. But when you're paying $1,000 or $5,000 to have a card graded, you kind of owe me an explanation. Like,
no doubt,
it's ridiculous that's not just offered. I don't know if you saw this, but just I don't know if this was today or yesterday. And I'm going to be very brief on this topic because, just for, I think, what should be obvious reasons, but at PSA, I guess Nat Turner, and I want to talk to you too about collecting cards and how you feel about collecting cards in Beckett slabs versus PSA or SGC or CSG or Tag. But Nat Turner is a collector. We know this. And he's also the, chairman of collectors in PSA. And he just received a card back that he shared on his Twitter. It's a luminescent Michael Jordan from, I think, 1997 or 98, of intricate die cut. And a portion of the surface was actually missing from the card. And it's it got a PSA 10. And he showed it. He must not have noticed this. And he showed it. And I'd love to see the grader's notes on that card. I'd love to see what the grader was thinking. Now, I've seen a theory that, well, maybe the card wasn't damaged at the point of grading, but in assembly, meaning when the card went from grading into the slab, it was placed in the slab and then was welded together. Maybe something happened there. Even so, there must have been something wrong, though. Something must have been there. I don't know. But wouldn't it be nice for even for Nat as a customer of his own company to be able to go in and say and look at those grader's notes and see what happened? That's a place where those would be very helpful. Were you aware of that situation?
No, I wasn't. And then I did hear about it. I guess it was a day ago. I don't even know. Today's Tuesday. Yes, maybe it was yesterday or Sunday night. But yes, I think what you just said is probably right. Things can get damaged at various points. I mean, so I'm pretty sure, look, all their graders, they do, I'm sure, as good a job as they could possibly do. And from what I saw, that was a fairly, seemed pretty obvious flaw. So maybe it happened somewhere along the assembly line, and it was already there. And, somebody just, folks just put down the label and closed it, and maybe something could have chipped off. I know that, like, in general, things happen. It's just not, people are still handling cards. With us, we put them right in those sleeves and they don't come out. I mean, the grader will look at them, obviously, that they go in there. So through the assembly process for us, they don't come out of the sleeve again. But when you're putting them into cases that are PSA cases or other cases, they obviously are raw. They're in the raw condition. Anything could happen. Those older cards, I mean, a little fleck could chip off something, somebody's fingernail, whatever. So I'm sure it's a super innocent mistake, and things could happen. So it doesn't surprise. I'm sure that happens more than we would maybe think.
I think there's several videos out on YouTube now and posts on Instagram, saying preferential treatment and that sort of thing. And I mean, I don't know that I buy into that. But I think it comes down to QA. I think it really comes into quality assurance, quality control, where they're they're running through so many cards every day. Are they? And I listen, this isn't meant to be, this is a grading discussion right now. And I think it's for anybody any grading company whose process is similar to PSAs. You have to look at those slabs before they go out the door. You have to make sure that the information on the label matches the card, that the card isn't putting the slab upside down. I've seen that in Beckett slabs, and it makes you shake your head. Like,
absolutely. I had a friend send me the other day, oh, they messed up my labels. they flipped them, It happens. It happened to me with PSA. It happened to every company. It does happen at some point.
Yeah, you're
not going to have 100% on anything you do, right?
Yeah.
So some things will fall through the cracks. And the question is then really becomes, how does the company deal with it? How quickly do they get the problem resolved? How effortless is it for the collector? Because I've had it happen to me. I had cards graded. They came back, 2 Damian Lillard cards. The labels were swapped, but they did a really good job. They send me a label, send it back, no problem. So I was without the card for another couple weeks. It's okay. That's the thing, is how do you respond to it is really the key, because I think mistakes will happen. But I think in general on this topic, look, I'm sure Nat and myself and you and anybody who's a collector, we all have cards in I have every brand here. Like, you and I were looking at some before. PSA, I bought a PSA card at the Dallas Card Show. I was there for a couple of days this week before coming back to New York. I love the card. I was like, this is an amazing card. I'm buying this card. And, would I prefer to buy something in Beckett? Of course I would. And that would be that's what I would look for first. But if there's a card, as you've said many times, sort of you buy the card, really not the holder, if you're a real collector. So I don't know. That's the way I look at it.
Or if you work at a grading company like we both do, you buy the card in a competitor's slab because you need that card. I mean, I'm going to continue to buy cards on the secondary market. I probably won't ever submit a card to grading unless it's a card that Tag doesn't grade. I'm not going to use Beckett or PSA anymore. I love what we're doing at Tag, but I'm still going to buy those cards on the secondary market because I need the card. I'm a card guy. And if I can, and the question to you is, like, you buy a card in a PSA slab, Scott, are you then thinking, I can't wait to get it crossed into a BGS holder because I prefer my cards in the BGS holder?
I tell you, I'm going to give you 2 answers. One is probably not. And I'll tell you why. And then the answer could be yes, absolutely. but the no is because I believe in for me, for the job to really understand what's going on, I think you have to have, I need to have cards from all the grading companies. I want to see what everybody's doing. I want to stay in touch and on top of things. If somebody has a new label, I want to see how that's done. Sometimes I refer to them and say, okay, how are they doing this? Why are they doing it better than us? What is it about their label that's elegant or successful or, has the right security features? So I have no problem with having a bunch of different cards from different grading companies. In part it's for research and understanding. Just like, I'll be honest, I will still send cards in for grading if it made sense. Why? I want to see turnaround times. Is it real? I see what these people are saying. Is it really real or is it not real? So there is some sort of, now they're probably going to cut me off, all these guys, but because I use my own name. But I do think that, if you own a McDonald's, back in the day, you walk into Wendy's, Burger King, whatever, you try their fries, like you kind of have to do this stuff if you really want to understand what's going on in the market and why people may love something about one company and not about another. Anyway, so that's long-winded, but that's truthful.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, the market research piece makes a ton of sense to me. And like when I've been packing up and preparing for the Toronto Expo for the past several days, and I'm now packed, ready to go. I fly out tomorrow, and I have one in my whole collection. I have maybe 3 SGC slabs, 1 CSG, and many of the others, others just being Beckett and PSA. and I decide I'm gonna make sure I take my one CSG slab and one of my SGC slabs. I know I'm already taking PSA and Beckett's. I'm having them for sale,
Right.
but I'm going to bring them just so that I can show people the differences when I'm talking about tag. And so I understand the market research part, and just to be able to understand the differentiators, not just in the slab but in the service level as well.
Right.
Okay.
So are you selling there? Do you have a booth and everything like you've had in the past? Okay, cool.
Yeah. I've got I'm back in my usual location I've had there for about 16 or 17 years. My regular booth. I'll be at booth 730. I look forward to seeing everybody there. And I'm going to be selling cards of all shapes and forms, from graded to raw, all the way through. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to.
Well, go by and say hello to the team at Beckett. There'll be a bunch of people there.
I will, for sure. I will. I got lots of friends at Beckett and friends at PSA, friends everywhere. So I definitely will. Okay, let's get some more comments here. Mid-Atlantic says, this is for you, says, I feel like collection management software is not a new idea or development. Can you talk more about what actually differentiates Knox from all others?
Tremendous amount. It's interesting. We were talking about it a little before, but the data is going to be a big piece of it. Obviously, Beckett has literally they have 30 plus years of data, which is remarkable. It's metadata and obviously image data too. So the thing about Knox, I'm not going to give everything away, is that it is more of an experience than it is a collection management tool. I think probably that's the best way to say it. And you'll see when it gets launched and when we get to a sort of a full feature set. But there will be ways to connect with others like never before. There will be ways to create your profile like never before. There will be ways to share that is totally different. There will be interactive events that will be different. So there's a whole handful of ways. I know it's not a direct answer, but it's obviously done on purpose. So you'll wait and see. There's also an educational piece of it, which lends towards really learning about the athlete that really has never been done before, in this space at least. So I think you'll see a lot of connectivity. And what we're really trying to build is a hub where folks can come in, have their cards there, but then not just be sort of a closed loop environment, but an environment that works with others too, with other partners, whether, it's a marketplace, whether it's a consignment shop, whether it's an insurance company that's doing insurance. There's all sorts of ways that we can connect with others via API. So vaults, whatever, tons of different things. So that's well more than collection management.
And just so people understand and are certainly clear, while Knox was the original name, it's being rebranded as Beckett Collect when it does officially launch. Is there going to be a beta stage?
There's an alpha coming in about a week, and then there will be a beta stage after that. I don't know if it'll be in December or the very, very beginning of January, but one or the other. Yeah. So I think, I think they're taking folks on the list right now for it. So you can find it. You can find that and jump on the list if you want.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I look forward to seeing what it's all about once it's up and running. Hockey Cards Up said, bravo to being open to grading notes. It's absurd that you can pay thousands for a grade and not be told why. Although, just to be clear, at Beckett, your pricing model is not the same as PSA's, where they charge by the value. You charge by the job. Is that right?
Yeah, no, it is. It's one of our quote unquote. It's one of our points of differentiation. I think that, one of the guys always says, I'll forget what he says, but it's like Mickey Mantle, Mickey Mouse. It doesn't matter. Like any card, you can put them at, at the economy level for $25. And you can throw one into our collector special at $22 and get subgrades for a Mickey Mantle. So yes, it is a differentiator for sure.
Well, one of the biggest problems with the pricing model that utilizes, an escalating price at escalating card values is that, well, if you graded your cards in that pricing model environment, between summer of 2020 and January of this year, you were probably paying a lot more than you'd have to pay today, because we've seen the card values come down on big cards. A card that might have been worth $300,000, you might be able to pick up for $75,000 or $80,000 today. And then there's all types of examples like that. Is that grading company offering refunds on the incremental value? Like for that reason, I think it's bogus, that pricing model, and I feel bad saying that, but I never liked it. So I'm glad that you aren't using that one.
No, we're not. And by the way, I'd be up for a refund on some of the things that I did too, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I sent in a Jordan rookie that I literally had in a screw down case since 1990, and I sent it in. It was like, it was tough to let it go right after all those years and put it out there, and and it came back, but thankfully, it was quite expensive to grade it, and so I think now it would be definitely a different number on the grading for sure.
For sure. I want to last topic, as we're kind of talking about some differentiators between Beckett and PSA, and the back to this issue that happened with this particular luminescent card that had the surface missing, like significant paper loss, that ended up in a PSA 10 holder. And there's been people that have been accusing PSA of giving preferential treatment to Nat Turner. I don't want to believe that. I don't think I do. I think there's another explanation that a lot of people maybe just haven't thought of yet. You are, you're in the Beckett offices about half the time or so. You're observing graders. How easy or hard is it for a grader to give preferential treatment to a known customer? Do they know who the customers are? And I know you can't speak for PSA, but maybe you can provide some insight from the Beckett side of things.
For us, they don't know. They're numbered cards that show up in a bin, basically, in an order that has an order number that's not associated with the name or an individual. So they wouldn't know, at all. In the case that happened with Nat, I just can't imagine that they're giving him preferential treatment. I don't think he wants it, would care to have it. Like, I'm pretty sure he's like a collector, like we are, and okay, that's my card. That's my card. Whatever it is, it is. Yeah. I've gotten, I've sent stuff in to Beckett and it got absolutely hammered, and then I'll open them up and it is what it is. Tell you that. Like, so no, we don't. There's no names. There's, with our system, there's no names. It's all just off of a number and a time frame, and that's it. So all right, you got to stay away from that. If you go there, like, that's it, right? So I mean, you really have to separate that out. It's got to be, one of the most important things you do.
It has to be. Maybe a few years ago, maybe before blowout forums became as big as they are, it was being done. Who knows? I'm not saying it was or wasn't, but I could see it. But now we all have to be on our toes, because there are people watching very closely to protect, for the sanctity, for the protection of the greater hobby. And I'm grateful for that as a lifelong hobbyist who only wants the best for it. It's important that grading companies, card companies, our auction companies are held to the highest standard by the hobby. We have no formal regulation. We have to self-regulate. One of the easiest and best ways to self-regulate is by using your wallet and giving business to the entities who you think are doing the best job of preserving the good of the hobby. So, okay.
And with everybody having a megaphone, which is basically their phone. It's funny how that came together, the megaphone and the phone, right? Like, you can't, you're not going to get away with anything. People are very vocal. They're very loud, especially in this, in this hobby, this industry. So I think it's, it's essential to separate that out. And they do a great job. That much I know.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do this next one quickly. Jeremy at Collectors League says, is it possible that Beckett could increase the quality of the internal sleeve?
Yeah. Yeah, that's being worked on now.
Good. Contender says it's so clear that Scott is a genuine collector, so important when leading a grading company to greatness. Yeah, that's we said. I don't know if you joined a bit late, Contender, but I made the same comment. We're certainly aligned on that right there. LA, I always forget how to sell that. I know I'm going to see you in Toronto. LaSchwein, looking forward to seeing some of you there. He's talking about the expo. Albert Jones, 95% of my slabs are Beckett slabs. He goes on to say, I wish any grade would stay with the gold label besides the black pristine. So there's a
there's a vote for the gold. Okay.
And the gold is on brand for Beckett, in my opinion. Contender says, imagine if grading companies had different slab options. We talked about that, Scott and I I think you don't want that personally, unless they're getting thicker with thicker cards. But again, everyone's different. I like uniformity. Hey, a lot of people like that HGA where every slab looks like it came from a different artist or something, whatever it is. If that's what floats your boat, by all means, collect what you like, buy what you like. But for me, I want uniformity. I think a lot of people do, but hey, I'm sure a lot of people don't as well.
Yeah, I think the only thing that, and we're not doing this, so don't get me wrong, but in my head, right, as like a collector, if you have a card that's like an amazing card, like sounds like some of your exquisites, if there's some incredible slab that could be produced that you can have, and really, I always say like Beckett, PSA, Tag, they're turning these raw items into assets, right? In my mind, right? That's what's really happening to some extent. So if there's some card out there that you have that you love that's actually has tremendous value, it would be cool to see it in more of a, I don't know, substantial differentiated slab, which could be a total like elevated experience. But that's like out there, but it could be really cool.
Yeah, I want to just touch. You used the word asset there for a minute, and this is totally off topic, but you got me thinking here. I see, I consider a sports card to be an asset. It's also a collectible. It can be both at the same time. And I see people saying often they'll come on to comments on whatever, Instagram, YouTube, and people will make they will make the comment that sports cards are not asset. They're not investments. They will say they're not investments. Well, they are certainly assets, and they've been assets ever since the first two kids at recess traded one for the other.
Right.
That is an asset. An asset is something that can be owned, that is tangible. It's an asset, no matter if you. Now, assets can also be investments. They're not all investments. Not all assets are investments, but many can. What's an investment? I think an investment is a property, including an asset, whose value goes up and down with a market, with a broad market. We have a broad market here. It's not as broad as the stock market, but it's still a broad market. So they're certainly assets. They are certainly investments. But the caveat to that is it's up to you and me as collectors to decide if we want to consider those assets under our own ownership. So for me, Scott, I keep records. I know what's going on in my financial world. I have my cards as assets on my personal balance sheet. So what that means is when I buy a card, if you know anything about accounting, I debit the asset and I credit, the cash going out the door, versus debiting an expense, which hits your income statement, and crediting the cash going out the door, or however you're paying for it. So you can decide for yourself if a card is an asset. If it is, put it on your balance sheet. If it's not, if you don't consider an asset or investment, put it on your income statement. Either way, they're still collectibles, and you can still collect and buy what you like. So anyway,
I'm with you on that. And the other thing is that a lot of us have insurance on some of these items, or if it's not the singular item, it's, a collection that has certain value too. And I think actually, collectible is kind of proven out in a lot of ways that they are assets. Maybe not every card, right? Certainly not every card, but many with the long proven history. And through Collectible, through the app, I've purchased several IPOs. I don't know if I have 20 of them on their platform or more, but cards that I could otherwise not afford, but was able to grab a few shares here and there, and that's always a nice thing. So I think they've proven that those are real assets, and they've seen turnover. It's exciting when there's a buyout offer. It's kind of a cool thing.
It is a cool thing. I love when I love when there's a buyout offer on Collectible. I think it's fun for content, and it just sort of validates the whole business, the Collectible business model. It's not for everybody. A lot of people don't like it. They don't want to see fractional. They don't think that. They say that it's not the stock market. So how can you? The stock market is fractionalized companies. Collectibles fractionalized collectibles. It's you can fractionalize vacation ownership. You can fractionalize real estate. It's not. Fractionalization is something that exists almost everywhere. It makes sense. Anytime you go to a party and they put out a bunch of pizzas, you go grab a piece of pizza. You're taking place in fractionalized pizza, people. You're getting 1/8 of that pie. That's fractional. You didn't have to go buy it all. Oh no, I want my own. I want it all for myself. It's not. You don't have to do that. Everything gets fractionalized these days. So in the investment world and elsewhere. So I think you're right. They have proven that, them and others. I mean, it's not, there are a lot of private funds that are putting millions of dollars into cardboard, and they have unit holders that we don't know about. I know those are out there. I hear about them.
Oh yeah. So, they have LPs, and one of our investors in Knox is Mint 10, which is DJ Ski, his fund, with Warren, and they invested both in cards, and they invested in some companies, including Knox. So yeah, and they've got plenty of limited partners who put money into the fund.
Fractionalize, that fund is fractional. Yeah. And it owns companies in the space, and it owns cards, even though it's not on a platform like Collectible, it's like that. So yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to the invest, are sports cards investments? Well, the ones that have value can be, if you want to consider them, but it's up to you. So when somebody says with confidence and vigor that sports cards are not investments, I wish they would just realize that you're only speaking for yourself and like people that think the way you do. But just because you think that way doesn't mean that's the way for everybody, and it doesn't mean it's the way. It's just the way you're thinking about it. And if I consider mine to be assets because I got a card here worth 10 grand today, and 25 years from now I'm going to maybe sell it for 20 grand or 1 grand, whatever it's going to be. Either way, if it goes up or down in value, that's an investment. Either it worked out or it didn't, but it's one way or another. I am converting it back into cash. Anytime you trade cash for something that can then be traded back for cash again, might be an investment. Maybe you invest in used couches, but you have a market for it. Inventory is an investment. Inventory, any type, is an investment. And companies invest in inventory. They carry inventory. Anyway, going off on a whole tangent here.
No, I'm with you.
Whole tangent. Okay, we're past we usually like to keep Collectible live to 1 hour. We're at 1 hour 10 minutes, but I feel like we got to go a bit more. Are you okay with that?
Sure.
Okay. You didn't convince me with that, but we'll run through.
No, I'm totally good with it. I was in the back of my head, I'm thinking, yeah, sure. Nobody in my house wants to talk to me anyway, so yeah, why not? Let's go. Let's hang out for longer.
All right, let's go to this Mid-Atlantic. And this is something I have a personal issue with. He says, as long as grading companies are grading their own employees and executives' cards, they will always have a perception problem, and rightfully so. And I said, I have a personal issue with that because I now work for TAG. I went to work for TAG because I love the darn Slab and everything that they're doing over there. And I want to have my cards graded by TAG, and I'm going to have my cards graded for TAG, by TAG. One thing that I think might alleviate some of the issues of this comment is that I can't tell the computer to grade my card differently than anybody else. I'm not even there to do it. So I hope that I'm going to be able to do that and not run into any issues like Nat just did. But let's face it, I probably will. But it'll come down to how do I deal with that, because I'm certainly going to want to use. I'm such a collector. I want my cards in there. What's your thoughts about that?
I don't know. It's sort of no offense, more of a pessimistic view of things. I think that if you're a collector, you want collectors in these businesses running them, helping to manage them, making sure that they're thinking the same way the broad audience of collectors thinks, and drives value in that way, and what the collector is looking for. So, and those folks like myself, Jeremy, Nat, and many others are always going to want to have their cards graded and do something. I think if it's done the right way, it's completely fine. The other choice you could do would be to give it, which I don't do, but you could give it to a group submitter and it throws into their order. And then, that's another angle. You could say, hey, well, Scott, that's a better idea. Then really nobody knows because this is coming through a group submitter and they're getting this stuff. And, then obviously, there'll be no 0.0 chance of anybody knowing whose card it is.
So, I like that. I think that's a good
idea.
I think that's a good potential solution that you just threw out there. So, okay, let's keep going. Thank you for the questions, everybody, so far. We'll go for about 5 more minutes here. Collectors League Jeremy says no white paper labels. I think you guys have heard that loud and clear. LaShwine, uniformity
from Jeremy before too, I think.
What's that?
From Jeremy before, which is good.
Yeah, good. There you go. Yeah, I'm sure. Jeremy knows everybody in the hobby. Yeah. LaShwine says uniformity is my preference as well. Hockey Cards Up says, first, thank you for doing this. Will Beckett consider changing its Gem Mint grade to a 10? I think it's a big hurdle, especially for newer and younger collectors. People want Gem Mint to be a 10. I don't think you can change your grading scale. What about you?
I think, it's interesting. I think it's really hard. It's really hard. It's a, right though. It's an uphill battle, right?
Well, let me just jump in because he goes on to say it can be done. CSG did it successfully, but CSG did it successfully like 6 months into their business with very little market share. So it's a completely different situation. But
you have to actually. I've given it quite a good amount of thought, and so is many members of the team. It's hard because there's 20 plus years of grading. There's 20 plus years of sales history, secondary market sales history. It's just very, very hard. And our 10s are obviously, a level above, which is also interesting in the sense, there are so many 10s out there in various companies' cards. Like, are they really all 10s? Like,
well, they're not. We know that.
Right. 10 should be pretty hard to get, right? So it's tough because it does say Gem Mint, and that the words, maybe we should get rid of the number. The words Gem Mint match up to, let's say, like a PSA or any of the other grading companies' Gem Mint. And so that's really the question, is how do you tie those together? Since our Gem Mint says 9.5, somebody else's says 10. But we're still discussing it, but I think it's going to be very, very, very difficult.
Let me share this thought. So you've just made the comment that are there any cards in a 10 holder that shouldn't be a 10? I said, well, of course there are. But here's the flip side of that, is that people submit cards over and over again until they get the grade they want. Oftentimes, you hear this all the time.
Yeah.
And people will submit a card to Beckett in a near gem, 2 9s and 2 9.5s or whatever, hoping for that last 9.5 to bump it up. People will submit 9s back to PSA for the review to get the second opinion from the same company for the second time, for the second fee and all that. But nobody ever is going to submit a card for regrading to see if it gets a lower grade. My point, where I'm going with this is whatever percentage of cards that are put out that are on the marketplace that are, let's say, 9s that should be 10s or 8s that should be 8.5s, there's at least as many 10s that should be 9s and 9s that should be 8.5s and so on and so forth. So, it comes down to what I say, especially in my role with TAG now, which is, consistent AI grading, is that the human manual grading companies do the best that you guys do the best that you can. I don't doubt that for a second. But it's just limited to the fact that it's human grading. So we have to, as a hobby, and I have a ton of slabs, Beckett and PSAs. We as a hobby just have to accept that it's what's out there. It's at least up until now.
I think that's right.
Okay, fine. Let's go to Joe's comment. Says, I'm a longtime fan of Beckett. Oh, but my recent submission, maybe my last 3 of the 5 cases, had a milky film on them that detracted from the presentation of the card. Is quality of case a priority?
No question. Big priority. Big priority. Yeah. We're working on it. Tell Joe, Joe, try to connect with me. How can we connect? DM at Beckett Collect, and let's get that fixed for you, for sure. So if you DM them and just say that, just put my name in there, we'll work on it for you, get it done.
Thank you for that, Scott, and for the question, Joe. Scott, Dr. Beckett has been removed from Beckett. I think he sold the company, if I remember, like a while ago, over 15 years ago or so.
Yeah, a long time ago.
I wanted to ask you, how important is his legacy still in Beckett within the four walls? And does he have any involvement to this day? I know he's obviously involved in the hobby. He does a podcast every day. Yeah. He's been on my show half a dozen times. I've done his a couple times. Speak a bit about Dr. Beckett and the importance of him to the company.
Yeah, no, I think he's crucial. It's interesting, actually, go back to what we talked about a while back, 40 minutes or so, about the team. There's a good number of folks on the team who started the company with him, who worked with him day in and day out. And I think what's nice about that is that they bring a lot of Dr. Beckett with them to the day-to-day, which is really nice. So that's a very positive note for that too. I have not been super involved with him yet. We have some ideas we want to approach him with on things that we can do together, and would like him to be involved. But I know that we will get sometimes. I know he's met with our new CEO. He's met with Kunal. He meets with Jeremy, of course. And we've gotten some emails saying, hey, what about this idea? What about that idea? But I think it's interesting. The emails are always so nicely laid out. He's not looking to sort of shove himself in, but hey, have you thought about this? Sometimes I'm like, yeah, we have, and we're working on that. Or, oh no, that's a good idea. So we would like to do some things with him and bring him more into the fold. I think if we can look into 2023, it's definitely going to be a priority for our team, especially from a marketing and just, bringing that connectivity into it, I think would be really important. I think the next generation of collectors, which is what I'm always looking at, because in some ways, yeah, we're building things, but we're really building for the next generation. We're not building these things for, no offense to Jeremy, you or me, but right, we're building for, we want our kids and their kids to collect. So we're trying to think about those, but I think still having that history is super important. So we definitely want to do that more.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. He's very generous with his time and ideas, and he says, it's not my company anymore, but it still has my name on it. Every single slab out there has his name on it. So so there has to be some a feeling of connection to it. But of course there is. He built it. It was a baby of his, and he wants to see it flourish. Of course he does. I'm sure he'd love. I'm not going to say I'm sure he'd love. I don't know what he'd love to do, but I would presume that he would be willing to be in whatever he'll do. But I think that the hobby would welcome that, because I think there's a lot of respect for him out there.
Yeah, definitely. And I still have Beckett magazines from the late 80s, 90s, so definitely, I think he would be great.
Will we be seeing you and Beckett at the Mint Collective at the end of March?
Yes. So we will definitely be there. We're finalizing that. I think basically over the last week, we've been speaking to these folks there. So yeah, I think we'll have a very good presence there. So yeah, we're excited about that. I know it's March 30th through April 2nd, I think, if that's right, something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, in Las Vegas, we will definitely be there. I'm excited. Last year we had a new brand, new presence, and that's where they announced both our deal and the Do Dilly deal. So that'll be a lot of fun to celebrate that.
All right, good. Okay, well, let's end it right there. So I want to thank you, Scott, for joining Collectible Live. Thank you, Ezra, for recruiting you to be on the show. And it's been great to have you, and fun to talk with you, especially considering that we both work at grading companies now. It adds a nice little dimension to the discussion. Thank you to the chat, to everybody watching, listening. If you're going to be listening to this later on, all the great comments and questions. I hope that we address them all accordingly and appropriately. And That's it. No episode of Collectible Live next weekend. Next Sunday, as I will be at the Toronto Expo, but we will be back the week after that. So hope everyone has a great week ahead. If you're going to be at the Toronto Expo, definitely come say hi to me at booth 730. I would love to meet as many people as I can. I'll definitely say hi to the folks from Beckett. And Scott, final comments to you, and then we're going to end this.
No, I just want to say thank you. Thank you to everybody who is watching or will watch and listen. And I hope you have a great show, Jeremy. I hope you either sell or buy or whatever you're looking to do a ton of.
Thank you.
So it should be fun. I'm very tempted to fly up there from New York for a day or so, which still may happen. So I heard it's an amazing show.
It's an amazing show. Well, maybe we'll see you there this weekend. Thanks again, everybody who's watching. Have a great rest of your night. Scott, hang tight 1 second, and this episode is over.